Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. Chapter 6, More Clues. Chris nudged Maria. Did you see that guy going into the yurt next door? Yeah, sort of. Why? Answered Maria. It's John Perkins, said Chris. You mean the guy at the lighthouse? Maria whispered. Chris nodded his head. Maria started climbing out of the car. Wow, he's been right next door and we didn't even know it. Let's go talk to him. Right now? Asked Chris, closing the car door. What'll we say? We'll ask him if he's heard of Charles Perkins, Maria decided, and find out what he's doing here. Maybe we can find out if he knows anything about the graveyard. And then you could... Maria, interrupted Chris, that sounds too nosy. So? Maria asked. We've got to ask questions to solve this mystery. He doesn't have to answer them if he doesn't want to. Chris frowned but nodded. I could thank him again for helping me in the lighthouse yesterday, but I don't know about just barging over there. He might not want to be bothered. We don't have to worry about that now, Maria said. Here he comes out of his yurt. It looks like he's going to cook his dinner. Let's go. Chris and Maria walked across the small dirt path that separated their yurt from John Perkins's. As they neared the picnic table, John looked up. Hey, it's my lighthouse buddy. How are you doing, Chris? Better than the last time you saw me, Chris said with a grin. This is my sister Maria. Maria, this is John Perkins, my friend from the lighthouse. Hi, John, Maria said. Thanks for rescuing my brother from another of his crazy stunts. Another? Does your brother need rescuing often? He asked with a twinkle in his eye. Too often, Maria answered, rolling her eyes. He doesn't trust what Mom and Dad say, or other grown-ups. He thinks he has to prove that they're right or wrong. Sounds like my great-grandfather Charles, said John. Charles Perkins? Chris asked. Why, yes, John answered, surprised. What do you know about him? Not much, but we'd like to know more, said Maria. Maria and I were exploring yesterday, said Chris. We found this old graveyard. It's full of weeds and stuff, except for Charles Perkins's grave, interrupted Maria. Someone's been cleaning it. Is it you? John Perkins smiled. I've been caught. I'm the one. But why? And why are you so far from home? And what are you doing here? Maria's questions tumbled out of her mouth like blocks out of a bucket. Maria, Chris hissed, don't be so snoopy. John laughed. It's okay. I'm glad to have someone else interested in my quest. Quest? Chris asked. John nodded. Yes, my quest to solve the mystery of my great-grandfather. Maria's eyes got big. See, Chris? I told you there was a mystery. Hush, Maria. Let him talk, Chris said. John laughed again. Well, let me start at the beginning. I was working on my family genealogy for a college class. A genealogy is information about who your relatives were, where they lived, and what they did. My family was interesting, but what really got my attention was my great-grandfather. I'd hear a little about him growing up, but I learned a lot more as I did my research. I guess he must have been quite a handful, full of mischief, and often rather foolish. He also didn't like trusting his parents or their advice, but then one day something happened that caused a big change in the way he acted. I heard or read lots of rumors, but no one could tell me what had really happened. Most anyone who knew him wasn't alive anymore. I was getting information that had been passed down. I was curious. People didn't change like that for no reason at all, so I asked a few more questions, talked to some more people, and that brought me here. So that explains it, exclaimed Maria. Yep, John answered. During my summer break from school, I decided I was going to see what I could find out. So did Charles Perkins live around here? Chris asked. He did for a while, John answered. His father was the lighthouse keeper. They lived in a house that was across from the lighthouse. There used to be a house there? Maria asked. What happened to it? When the lighthouse became automated and didn't need a keeper, the house was left empty, John said. Eventually, it burned to the ground. All that's left is the stone foundation, now mostly covered with sand and beach grass. You might find a few stray bricks left from the fireplace, though most of them have been hauled off. But the lighthouse has lasted all these years because it's made out of stone and cement, Chris guessed. You're right, said John, but the lighthouse has changed some. I have pictures of what it used to look like, and that's where my search has led me. To the lighthouse? What do you mean? Chris asked. Just before I left home, I came across some stuff that had been my great-grandfather's, John continued. Letters he'd written and several diaries he'd kept. In one of his diaries, he had started writing about some secret at the lighthouse or something. Part of it didn't make any sense. It was like something was missing, or he'd forgotten to write it down. "A secret at the lighthouse?" exclaimed Chris. "How exciting!" "It would be even more exciting if I could solve the mystery," said John, "but so far I've found nothing. I'm running out of time. I've got to head back home at the end of this week." He paused as he dumped a can of soup into a pan. "And then there's that strange epitaph." "Epitaph?" Chris questioned. "What's that?" "The words that are carved on my great-grandfather's gravestone. 'When safely placed upon the shore, my life was changed forevermore.' He wanted that on his gravestone. But what does it mean?"
The story you've heard today is a chapter of the Shoebox Kids, Book 12, Mystery of the Abandoned Lighthouse, written by Suzanne Grant Perdue and Grant Perdue, edited and created by Jerry D. Thomas, and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.